You know that feeling, right? The wind in your hair, the open road stretching out in front of you, the freedom of two wheels beneath you. It's exhilarating, isn't it? But with that thrill comes responsibility. The responsibility to understand your motorcycle, keep it running smoothly, and keep yourself safe out there.
It's about respect, really,
Yeah,
for the machine, for the road, and for yourself as a rider.
exactly. And that's what we're diving deep into today. Here on the All Sorts podcast, we're all about giving you the knowledge you need, cutting through the noise and getting straight to the heart of things. Today's deep dive, mastering motorcycle care. We'll be looking at the anatomy of a motorcycle, the maintenance routines that keep it purring like a kitten, and the safety essentials that every rider needs to know.
All drawn from a whole bunch of sources, by the way. We've done the research, sifted through the manuals, the forums, the expert opinions to bring you the most important takeaways.
Because, let's be honest, there's a ton of information out there. It can get overwhelming, even for experienced riders.
Yeah.
Our mission, to give you that solid foundation, those aha moments that make you a more confident and informed rider.
So you can spend less time worrying and more time enjoying the ride.
Sounds good to me. So let's get started. First things first, we need to understand the machine itself, the anatomy of a motorcycle. It's more than just knowing the names of the parts. It's about understanding how they work together to create that magical riding experience.
It's like knowing the body, you know. You can't really treat an illness if you don't know how the organs work together. Same with a motorcycle. Understanding its anatomy helps you diagnose problems, understand its limits, and keep it running smoothly.
Okay, so let's break it down. We'll start with the heart of the beast, the engine.
The engine. The source of power, the thing that gives a motorcycle its soul. And one of the first things you learn about engines is that they come in different sizes, measured in cubic centimeters or cc's.
Right, so a bigger engine means more power. Simple enough.
Well, sort of. More cc's generally mean more power, yeah. But bigger isn't always better, especially for new riders. A smaller engine can be more forgiving, easier to handle. It's like starting with a bicycle before jumping on a motorbike, you know?
Makes sense. So size matters, but placement matters too, right? The engine's position within the frame affects the bike's handling.
Absolutely. The engine is a big chunk of weight, and where you put that weight affects the bike's center of gravity and its stability. It's all carefully calculated by the engineers. You want a bike that feels balanced, not top-heavy or too light in the front.
So engine sorted. What's next?
Well, the engine needs something to sit in, right? That's where the chassis comes in. It's essentially the skeleton of the motorcycle.
The framework that holds everything together?
Exactly. And it's more than just a single piece. It includes the frame itself, often made of aluminum or steel, for strength and rigidity. Then you have the front fork, connecting the handlebars to the front wheel. It's what lets you steer.
And it's also part of the suspension system, right?
Yep. The front fork houses the front suspension, usually a hydraulic shock absorber.
Yeah.
Then you have the rear suspension, which can be a bit more complex. There are different types of rear suspension setups. But basically, the suspension system smooths out the bumps, absorbs shocks, and keeps the wheels in contact with the road.
Which is obviously pretty important for staying upright.
And for controlling the bike. Good suspension improves handling, braking, and overall stability.
Okay, so we have the engine, the chassis. Now we need to get that power from the engine to the wheels. That's where the transmission comes in.
Right, the transmission transfers the engine's power to the rear wheel, allowing you to control the speed and torque. Most motorcycles use a type of transmission called a sequential manual transmission.
Sequential manual? What's that all about?
Basically, it means you shift gears in a specific order, one after the other. You can't skip gears. You use a foot pedal to shift up or down, and a hand lever, called the clutch, to disengage the engine momentarily during gear changes. It gives you a very direct connection to the engine and the power it produces.
So you're actively involved in managing the bike's performance.
Exactly. It's part of what makes riding a motorcycle so engaging.
All right, so we've got the power moving. Finally, we need something to connect us to the road. That's where the wheels and tires come in.
Yeah, they might seem like simple components, but they're crucial for both performance and safety. And there are a lot of choices when it comes to tires. Different types of tires are designed for different riding conditions, from smooth pavement to off-road trails.
So choosing the right tire for your riding style and the conditions you'll be riding in is important.
It's essential. The right tire can make a huge difference in how your bike handles, how well it brakes, and how comfortable the ride is.
And of course, proper tire maintenance is crucial.
Absolutely. Regular checks for wear, damage, and proper inflation are non-negotiable. You don't want to be caught out with a flat tire, especially at speed.
And speaking of information, let's not forget the instrument display. that dashboard of information that tells you what's going on with the bike.
The instrument display has come a long way from the simple speedometers and fuel gauges of the past. Modern bikes often have digital displays with a whole host of information, from engine temperature to GPS navigation. It's like having a mini computer on your handlebars.
All designed to keep you informed and in control.
Exactly. So there you have it, the basic anatomy of a motorcycle. A complex machine, but also a beautifully engineered one.
And understanding how it all works together is the first step towards becoming a more competent and confident rider.
And a safer one, too.
Absolutely. Now that we've got a handle on the anatomy, let's talk about keeping that machine in tip-top shape. Maintenance. Our sources are full of advice on how to keep your motorcycle running smoothly and reliably for years to come.
And it's not just about avoiding breakdowns. Regular maintenance can actually improve your bike's performance, make it more fuel efficient, and even extend its lifespan.
So where do we start? What are the essential maintenance routines?
Well, one of the key takeaways from our research is the importance of regular checks, before every ride and at regular intervals.
So a pre-ride check is like a quick once-over before you hit the road.
Exactly. It's a chance to spot anything that might be out of place, any potential problems before they become bigger issues.
So what are we looking for during a pre-ride check?
First things first, a visual inspection. Walk around your bike, look for anything unusual, leaks, loose parts, damage, anything that doesn't look right.
And leaks can be pretty tricky to spot, right?
Well, some are more obvious than others. You're looking for oil, coolant, or fuel. And each has a distinct smell, so use your nose as well as your eyes. If you see a puddle under your bike, try to identify the source.
Okay, so leaks, loose parts, what else?
Check your tires, make sure they're inflated properly, and look for any signs of wear or damage, cracks, cuts, bulges, anything that could compromise the tire's integrity.
And how do we know if the tires are inflated properly?
Your owner's manual will tell you the correct tire pressure. And most motorcycles have a sticker somewhere on the frame that lists the recommended pressure as well. It's important to use a reliable tire gauge to check the pressure. And always do it when the tires are cold.
Cold tires.
Yeah, the tire pressure changes as the tires heat up from riding. So if you check the pressure when the tires are hot, you'll get an inaccurate reading.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So tires checked. What's next?
Lights and horn. Make sure all your lights are working: headlight, taillight, brake light, turn signals. And give your horn a quick toot just to be sure it's functioning. It's all about making sure you're visible and audible to other road users.
And of course, always carry your license, registration, and insurance information.
Absolutely. That's just basic legal stuff. You never know when you might need it.
Okay, so that's the pre-ride check. What about those more in-depth periodic checks?
Well, there are a few key areas we need to focus on. Let's start with the tires and wheels again.
Tires are so important.
They are. They're your only point of contact with the road.
Yeah.
So regular inspection is crucial. You're looking for wear and tear, damage, anything that could compromise their performance.
And we mentioned tread depth earlier. How do we know when the tires are worn out?
Most cars have wear bars built into the tread. They're small, raised sections of rubber that become visible when the tread is worn down to the legal limit. If you can see the wear bars, it's time for new tires.
And if there are no wear bars?
There's a handy trick called the penny test. Take a penny and insert it into the tread groove with Lincoln's head upside down. If you can see the top of Lincoln's head, the tread is too shallow and the tire needs to be replaced.
Okay, so tread depth checked. What else?
Look for any signs of damage on the tire sidewalls, cracks, cuts, bulges, anything unusual. Also, check for uneven wear. If one side of the tire is wearing faster than the other, it could be a sign of a suspension problem or a misaligned wheel.
And what about the wheels themselves?
Give each wheel a spin and look for any wobble or play. That could indicate a problem with the wheel bearings. Also, check the spokes or the rim for any signs of damage or cracks.
And those little weights attached to the rim.
Those are wheel weights. They help balance the wheel and prevent vibrations. Make sure they're all still securely attached.
Okay, wheels and tires checked. What's next?
The final drive. That's the system that transfers power from the transmission to the rear wheel. It could be a chain, a belt, or a shaft drive.
So different systems require different maintenance.
Exactly. If you have a chain drive, you need to keep it clean and lubricated. Check for wear on the chain and the sprockets, those toothed wheels that the chain wraps around. You'll also need to adjust the chain tension periodically.
How often should we lubricate the chain?
It depends on how much you ride and the conditions you ride in. But a good rule of thumb is to lube the chain every 500 miles or so.
And what about cleaning the chain?
Definitely clean it before you lube it. Use a chain cleaner and a brush to remove dirt and grime.
Okay, chain drives sorted. What about belt drives?
Belt drives are generally lower maintenance than chains. You don't need to lubricate them. But you should still inspect the belt regularly for wear and tear. Look for cracks, fraying, or missing teeth, and check the belt tension. If it's too loose or too tight, it can affect performance and shorten the belt's lifespan.
And shaft drives?
Shaft drives are the simplest and require the least maintenance. You mainly need to keep an eye on the gear oil level and change it according to the manufacturer's recommendations.
Okay, final drive checked. Moving on to another critical system, the brakes.
Ah, yes, the brakes. Possibly the most important safety system on your motorcycle.
So, what do we need to check here?
First, check the brake fluid level. There's a reservoir on the handlebars, usually on the right side. Make sure the fluid level is between the minimum and maximum marks.
And the brake pads?
Absolutely. The brake pads are what actually grip the brake rotors and slow the bike down. You can usually see the brake pads through a small window in the brake caliper. Check their thickness and look for any signs of uneven wear.
How do we know when it's time to replace the brake pads?
If the brake pads are worn down to about 2 millimeters thick, it's time to replace them.
And the brake rotors?
The brake rotors are those metal discs that the brake pads clamp onto. Check them for any signs of warping, scoring, or excessive wear. If they're damaged, they'll need to be replaced.
And the brake lines?
The brake lines carry the brake fluid from the master cylinder to the calipers. Inspect them for any signs of cracking, leaking, or damage.
Okay, so we've checked the fluid, the pads, the rotors, and the lines. Anything else?
Take the bike for a short ride and test the brakes. Make sure they feel firm and responsive. If the lever feels spongy or the brakes don't seem to be working properly, it could be a sign of air in the brake lines. You'll need to bleed the brakes to remove the air.
Sounds like something best left to a professional.
Probably a good idea. Bleeding brakes can be a bit tricky if you're not familiar with the process.
Okay, brakes checked. Now let's talk about fluids.
When we talk about fluids, we're not just talking about the brake fluid. There's also the engine oil, the coolant, and possibly the transmission fluid and fork oil as well.
So a lot of fluids to keep track of.
Yeah, but they're all important for keeping the bike running smoothly. Let's start with the engine oil.
Engine oil is essential for lubrication and cooling, right?
Exactly. It helps reduce friction between moving parts in the engine, which reduces wear and tear and helps the engine run more efficiently. It also helps to dissipate heat from the engine.
So how often should we change the engine oil?
It depends on the type of motorcycle, the type of oil you use, and how much you ride. But a good general rule of thumb is to change the oil every 3,000 to 5,000 miles or every 6 months, whichever comes first.
And we should always change the oil filter at the same time, right?
Absolutely. The oil filter removes dirt and debris from the oil, so it needs to be replaced regularly to keep the oil clean.
Okay, engine oil and filters sorted. What about the coolant?
The coolant helps regulate the engine's temperature. It prevents the engine from overheating.
And how often should we change the coolant?
It's a good idea to flush and replace the coolant every 2 years or so. You should also check the coolant level regularly and top it up if necessary.
And what about the transmission fluid and fork oil?
If your motorcycle has a separate transmission, you'll need to change the transmission fluid according to the manufacturer's recommendations. And the fork oil, which is the fluid in the front suspension, should be changed periodically as well.
Okay, fluids checked. What about the various controls on the bike? The clutch, the throttle, the handlebars, and so on.
Good point. These controls are your interface with the motorcycle, so it's important to make sure they're all working properly.
So what are we looking for here?
Start with the clutch lever. Make sure it operates smoothly and has the correct amount of free play. The free play is the amount of movement in the lever before you feel resistance.
And the throttle.
Make sure the throttle grip rotates smoothly and snaps back to its closed position when you release it.
And the handlebars.
Check that the handlebars turn freely from lock to lock. There shouldn't be any binding or sticking. And check the tightness of the handlebar clamps.
And the levers for the brakes and clutch.
Make sure the levers are securely attached and adjust them to your liking. You want them to be comfortable to reach and easy to operate.
And the foot pegs and shifter?
Check that the foot pegs are securely attached and the shifter moves smoothly through all the gears.
Okay, controls checked. What about the battery?
The battery is the heart of the electrical system. It provides the power to start the engine and run all the lights and electronics.
So keeping it in good shape is essential.
Absolutely. Regularly check the battery terminals for corrosion and clean them if necessary. You can use a wire brush and a solution of baking soda and water to clean the terminals. And make sure the battery is securely fastened in its mounting bracket.
And if the battery seems to be losing its charge?
You can try charging it with a battery charger. But if it's an old battery, it might be time to replace it.
Okay, battery checked. What about the air filter?
The air filter is another important component. It prevents dirt and debris from entering the engine.
So a clean air filter means a happy engine.
Exactly. Check the air filter regularly and clean, or replace it as needed.
How often should we check it?
It depends on the type of air filter and the conditions you ride in. But a good general rule of thumb is to check it every 6,000 miles or so.
And what about the exhaust system?
Check the exhaust pipes and muffler for any signs of damage or rust, and make sure the exhaust system is securely mounted to the bike.
Okay, exhaust checked. Anything else?
Just a few more things.
Yeah.
Check the drive belt or chain for wear and tension. Make sure the lights are all working properly. And give the bike a general once-over. Make sure everything looks and feels right.
Sounds like a lot to keep track of.
It is. But regular maintenance is essential for keeping your motorcycle running smoothly and safely. And it can actually save you money in the long run by preventing costly repairs.
So it's worth taking the time to do it right.
Absolutely. And if you're not comfortable doing some of these checks yourself, you can always take your bike to a qualified mechanic.
Right. Better safe than sorry. Speaking of safety, that's our next topic. Our sources highlight some crucial safety tips for motorcyclists.
Safety should always be top of mind for any rider.
Absolutely. So what are the key things to keep in mind?
Well, one of the most important things is to always wear proper protective gear.
That means a helmet, of course.
A helmet is essential. It can literally save your life in an accident. But it's also important to wear other protective gear, such as gloves, a jacket, and boots.
And what about eye protection?
Definitely. If your helmet doesn't have a built-in face shield, you should wear goggles or sunglasses to protect your eyes from wind, debris, and insects.
Makes sense. And what about choosing the right motorcycle for our skill level?
That's another important safety consideration. A powerful motorcycle can be a lot to handle for a beginner. Start with a smaller, less powerful bike and gradually work your way up as you gain experience.
Right. Don't try to jump on a super bike right out of the gate.
Exactly. It's important to choose a bike that you're comfortable with and that you can control safely.
And what about planning our rides?
Planning your rides is a good way to stay safe. Choose routes that are appropriate for your skill level and the conditions. Avoid riding in heavy traffic or bad weather if possible. And take breaks often to rest and stay hydrated.
Right. Fatigue can be a big factor in motorcycle accidents.
It is. When you're tired, your reaction time slows and your judgment can be impaired. So it's important to listen to your body and take breaks when you need them.
And of course, never ride under the influence of alcohol or drugs.
Absolutely. That's just common sense. Alcohol and drugs impair your judgment and coordination, making it extremely dangerous to operate any vehicle, especially a motorcycle.
And what about defensive riding?
Defensive riding is all about being aware of your surroundings and anticipating potential hazards. Assume that other drivers don't see you and ride accordingly. Be especially cautious at intersections where motorcycles are often overlooked.
Right. It's like you have to be extra vigilant as a motorcyclist.
You do. Motorcycles are smaller and less visible than cars, so you have to be more proactive in looking out for potential dangers.
And what about some of those high-tech safety features we hear about? Things like anti-lock brakes and traction control.
Those features can definitely enhance safety. Anti-lock brakes help prevent the wheels from locking up during hard braking, which can help you maintain control of the bike. And traction control helps prevent the rear wheel from spinning out, which can improve stability and acceleration.
So those features are worth considering if they're available on the bike you're looking at.
They are, but it's important to remember that technology is not a substitute for good riding skills and judgment.
Right. You still need to be a responsible and aware rider.
Exactly. No amount of technology can replace good riding habits.
So there you have it. Motorcycle safety in a nutshell. Wear your gear, choose the right bike, plan your rides, ride defensively, and be aware of your surroundings.
And remember, safety is an ongoing process. It's something you need to be mindful of every time you ride.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've delved into the anatomy of a motorcycle, explored essential maintenance routines, and highlighted key safety considerations.
We've given you the knowledge, the tools, and the inspiration to become a more confident, competent, and safe motorcyclist.
Now it's up to you to put that knowledge into practice. Take good care of your machine, be a responsible rider, and most importantly, enjoy the ride.
The open road is calling. Go out there and explore, but do it safely and with the knowledge that you're well prepared.
And if you found this deep dive helpful, don't forget to check out all the other amazing content we have here on the All Sorts podcast. We've got deep dives on everything from history and science to culture and current events.
And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on X, Instagram, and Threads for all the latest updates and behind-the-scenes insights.
We're building a vibrant community of curious minds, and we'd love for you to be a part of it.
Thanks for listening, and ride safe.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those wheels turning.
And may your journeys, both on the road and in the pursuit of knowledge, be filled with adventure and discovery.
See you on the next deep dive.
We'll be waiting.